For decades, global trade felt like a pretty simple game. Find the cheapest way to make things, sell them everywhere you can, and just watch the world get richer together. But what if that game is over? What if the most important question isn't how much does it cost, but are you on our team or theirs? Let's unpack what this massive shift could mean for all of us.
So we're going to explore this really powerful idea that's taking hold right now. The idea that the world's economy isn't just getting more connected anymore. In fact, it might be actively breaking apart into rival teams.
Think about it this way. Is global trade starting to look like a schoolyard playground? Where countries are picking their friends, forming cliques, and then just shutting everybody else out? It's a simple way to put it, but honestly, it gets right to the heart of this huge, complex change that's happening.
Okay, so there's a technical term for this whole thing. It's called geopolitical fragmentation. And all it really means is that who you're friends with politically, your alliances, your shared values, that's becoming the new blueprint for who you do business with. It's completely redrawing the economic map we've been using for years. Now, that's a pretty huge claim, right? Is this just a cool theory, or is it something you can actually see happening? To figure that out, we're going to follow the data, and we'll use a really fascinating new study as our guide.
Yeah, this isn't just guesswork. Researchers at the French Treasury literally dug into 14 years of trade data, looking at 90 different countries. And they had one main goal: to find hard, cold evidence of whether these so-called blocks are actually forming.
And what's really interesting is how they did it. To even test this theory, you first have to decide what a bloc is, right? So they tried 3 different ways of grouping countries. First, by economic clubs, like the G7 versus the BRICS. Second, by how they vote at the UN. And third, and this is the important one, by who their military alliances are. And this is where the picture gets crystal clear. The data showed that the single biggest force splitting the world's trade apart wasn't about economics or even diplomacy. It was military alliances. Basically, who you're willing to fight for is now deciding who you're willing to buy from. The study even pinpointed the exact moments this whole thing kicked into overdrive. You can see a clear split starting back in 2014 with Russia's annexation of Crimea. But the real break? The moment the lines on the graph just shoot apart, that was the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. These weren't just political events, they were economic earthquakes. So how big of a shift are we talking about here? Well, let's just look at the numbers. Since 2010, countries that have a military alliance with the US have boosted their imports from each other by about 40%. They are absolutely turning inward and trading more with their friends. But here's the other side of that coin, and honestly, it's even crazier. During that exact same time, those same US allies have cut their imports from Russia's military allies by a whopping 80%. This is not a slow drift, folks. This is a massive, deliberate economic wall going up between these two groups. Okay, so the map is being redrawn, but this isn't free. It turns out this division comes with some really serious economic costs, and it could undo decades of benefits that, frankly, we've all started to take for granted. For years, globalization was a pretty good deal, right? It gave us lower prices, way more stuff to choose from, and it helped economies grow. But fragmentation? It basically threatens to throw all of that into reverse. It could lead to a world that's more expensive, less efficient, and just less productive. What we're doing is trading that efficiency for a feeling of security. And people have tried to put a number on this. The World Trade Organization did the math, and their estimate is pretty sobering. In a world that gets really fragmented, the entire global economy could shrink by up to 5%. To put that in perspective, that is a massive, massive hit, bigger than a lot of global recessions. And the pain doesn't stop with GDP. When the world is divided, it gets so much harder to work together on huge problems, like climate change. It can trap poorer countries, cutting them off from the markets they need to grow. And the real irony is, a world that's less connected might actually be a more dangerous one, not a safer one. But look, it would be a huge mistake to think this is all just happening for no reason. There are very real, very legitimate reasons why countries are heading down this path. This whole shift is happening because the world feels like a more dangerous place. Governments are now using trade, tariffs, sanctions, you name it, as a tool for national security. The big buzzword is de-risking. The idea is to make sure your economy can't be held hostage by a rival. But, as we're about to see, de-risking is a lot cleaner on paper than it is in real life. The US-China trade war is the perfect example of this. So, step 1, The US slaps on huge tariffs. Step 2, sure enough, direct imports from China fall off a cliff. But here's where the story gets tricky. The trade didn't just vanish, it just moved.
And you can see it perfectly in this chart. As the U.S. share of imports from China went down, its share from places like Vietnam and Mexico shot up. And what that tells you is that a lot of these supply chains weren't really broken. They were just rerouted. It's like a global shell game, and it makes actually de-risking your economy incredibly difficult. So we end up here with this really fundamental choice. The data's pretty clear. We are moving into a more fragmented world, and we're doing it in the name of security. But that security comes with a really steep price tag. And the biggest question for all of us over the next decade might just be, can we find a way to have both security and prosperity? Or are we being forced to choose?